center of South America lies a land of volcanoes and tropical jungles. Bolivia, where the sounds, the aromas, and the colors are in harmony with the people descended from the ancient Incas. With its rugged, dusty hues, it's also the land of colorful lakes in the midst of the Andes Mountains. Bolivia is the heart of the South American continent.
Mario, ¿dónde está?
Mario, where are you?
Sí? Okay?
Okay, I'm on my way.
Erwan Guégan, a Frenchman who's been living in Bolivia for 2 years, is on his way to the village of Mapiri on the edge of the Amazon basin. There's no train or plane to access the valleys of the Yungas region, only a steep, twisting road and collective taxis crammed to the limit by their drivers. This is a deadly road. Cut into steep mountainsides, it's nearly impossible to get by an oncoming vehicle. So many lives have been lost here that it's called the Carretera de la Muerte, Death Road.
On est parti de La Paz, on était à 3600 mètres.
We left La Paz up at 3,600 meters. Then the road took us up to 4,600 meters, almost the height of Mont Blanc. And the rest is a descent of 3,500 meters on this road, which will bring us almost to the equatorial forest. So we'll go from -2, -3 degrees to 35 in the shade. There's a legend that says that when you take this road on a foggy night, a second road can open up. So people take that second road and go over the edge. They say that the spirits lure them towards their fate, towards the wrong road.
Erwan knows all the legends about this road, the only access to the Amazonian part of the country. His many trips and encounters here have brought him to know and love this land. By collective taxi, it takes at least a day to get to the village of Mapiri. That's in good weather and with no stopping. At least 3 days when it's raining.
Bien, 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 bien. No te para. No te para, no te para.
As the kilometers roll by, people get on, others get off. The hours drag on. The passengers each do what they can to forget the bumps, dust, and heat that rattle the bones and numb the mind.
¿Hay alguien? J'ai quand même 2 jours de route.
You're on the road for 2 days, so you have the time to talk to people. You go through some rough patches. You run into someone who's in trouble. What I like about places like this is that they're like the sea. You have to help out the person in trouble. So if you break down on the way, people are going to stop. You talk it over, and they'll try to find a solution. You always have the human contact here. This is the country's true riches right now.
The last obstacle on the way to Mapiri, crossing the river. This little city in the heart of the Amazon jungle is like the Wild West, with its gold mines and its pioneers from the four corners of Bolivia and even from all of South America. In high water season, it's impossible to cross the river, so the inhabitants are totally isolated.
Ça va, Mario? Hein? Si, Ito.
Erwan has been working on a project here that he's quite committed to. The construction of a landing strip to open up the region and thus allow medical evacuations. The landing strip at Mapiri has been ready for 2 weeks, but so far no plane has yet landed here. Erwan is 47 and is no stranger to adventures in far-off lands. He ran an organic pepper plantation in Africa. He went hunting for the treasure of Coco Island. He learned magic with the pygmies, made movies, sold furniture in China. His ability to bounce back from one offbeat project to another, even more wild one, has taken him to 5 continents. A few months ago, he embarked on a new undertaking. He has decided to write his autobiography, relating his 1001 adventures.
You experience an adventure, and then when you get home, you realize you're hooked. And that's how you wind up in Bolivia working in gold and setting up an airline company to help out the local population.
Gold is the main economic activity of Mapiri, and most of the mines are along the river. Big mining companies are working the Bolivian soil with fleets of bulldozers and excavators. But there are also the solitary prospectors who travel the river by pirogue to try their luck picking up the crumbs spit out by the gigantic mines. These men are desperados who toil at the earth or strain the muddy river water for a few flakes of gold.
You should know that the President Evo Morales gave this land back to the Indian communities. Then those Indian communities set up cooperatives. And it's those cooperatives that possess the mining rights. 90% of the mines here belong to the local population.
Victor is one of those souls driven to the Mapiri by gold fever and poverty. For 3 years now, he's been working like a dog on this desolate beach. Victor, with the energy of despair, spends his days running from the hole he's digging to the pump, which is forever getting blocked up with sand, and to the sieve he uses to separate the stones from the tiny flakes of the precious metal.
Is there gold in this river?
Yeah, there's gold in there. But it's the river that decides to deposit the gold or not. The river lays down the law. She deposits what she's carrying here and there. You have to be able to recognize the stones. These, for example, are good. The round pebbles like these, they're no good. You find gold along with the flat stones. They're the boss stones. The others, traders.
Completely cut off from society, Victor lives and works all alone on this little patch of beach. He says that the wild animals of the jungle are his only friends.
Back home, they all think I'm making good money. But I'm earning nothing. That's how it is. I'm earning peanuts. I never come up with more than half a gram. Gold's the devil here. And money is the Lord.
Y la plata es del Señor.
Everything comes from the Lord.
El Señor, todo es del
Everything
Señor.
is God.
Todo es del Dios. Todo.
This crumpled scrap of paper contains the fruit of 3 weeks' hard work, 20 euros worth of gold. Once a month, Victor goes into the village to sell his gold and buy supplies to get him through the following month.
Ciao, Fidel. Gracias.
As for Fidel, he decided to try his luck in a socavón, a gallery dug in the riverbank and which yields too little gold to interest the mining companies. He works alone as well, but it's the price of his freedom.
Eso hay que cuidar, hay que abrigarse bien.
You have to take care of yourself in the mine and cover up well.
Hay sótano, ¿ve?
You have to drink fizzy drinks.
Después,
And above all, never ice-cold drinks.
Cosas, hielos, fresco hielo.
The cold
Eso ataca-
gives you a pain right here, and you can catch a pneumonia.
Así te impide el trabajo en... No,
I've been working in this mine for a long
tampoco
time,
no.
and I never get sick because I work at a relaxed pace. I don't eat too
Tampoco me
much,
siento así, comida.
and I don't drink too
No me
much
da
water.
mucha hambre.
I take it easy.
Tranquilo trabajo.
Erwan is inspecting the landing strip this morning. If everything goes according to plan, an airplane should be landing here for the first time this afternoon.
Il a plu toute la nuit. Le terrain
It rained all night.
Mais bon, ça,
The ground is a bit muddy, but it looks like it should be okay.
mais bon, la brume, là, elle coince
However,
un peu
because of the
sur
humidity, the mist is kind of clinging to the peaks of the small nearby
les
mountains.
petites montagnes alentours.
I think we'll wait for an hour or two. Then we'll make a decision because the pilot is the only one to decide whether he'll land or not.
Décider s'il se pose ou non. C'est beau ça?
Nice, huh?
Comunicado. El Gobierno Autónomo Municipal de Mapiri, en coordinación con la Junta de Vecinos, Comité Cívico y jefes de zona, comunica a toda la población de Mapiri que a la llegada de la avioneta de estos días deberán estar presentes toda la concurrencia en general en el lugar de la pista, ya que estará llegando un piloto boliviano con la finalidad de fomentar el turismo en nuestro municipio de Mapiri, que a la vez necesitamos transporte aéreo. Atentamente, firma el directorio.
Now you're going to boost tourism. You're really going to do something here. That's great for everybody. When will the plane get here?
Oh, el capitán va a llamarnos.
The pilot will call us in about half an hour, I think, on account of the rain. Okay, bye. Thanks. See you this afternoon?
Okay. Listo.
The weather has cleared up, and the whole village has turned out for the inauguration of the new airfield. They don't have a windsock yet, so Erwan lights a fire at the end of the runway to give the pilot the wind direction.
Cuidado, eh.
We waited all day, but the pilot managed to go around the storm and made a perfect landing, so the runway looks good. I couldn't be happier. We're in business. How you doing? Did you have a good flight?
A bit of turbulence, but it was good.
Let me introduce you to the new airfield manager.
Mira, Capitán Ivo.
This landing strip will help a lot in developing the region, and above all, in emergencies when an ambulance is needed, it can save lives. So it's very important to have a runway and keep it in good working order.
Moi, ce qui me fait plaisir, c'est que les gens soient heureux.
What I like the most is that the people are happy. When you look at the kids' faces, you know it's the first time they've ever seen a plane.
Now that the first plane has landed in Mapiri, Erwan has a new chapter for his book. One more adventure in the life of a free spirit.
All I can say to people is that they should listen to themselves. Don't listen to what people tell you, like, you have to buy a house, you have to have 2 children, you have to have a minivan. Don't listen to what people tell you. Live your own life. I've always done just what I wanted to do. I not only feel free, but I know I am. If tomorrow morning I've had enough of this place, I'll pack my bags and go, even if I don't have any money. I'm going to take my time before finding someone and settling down. It could take 2 weeks, it could take 6 months. That's what life is. In any case, that's what it is for me.
Photography and archaeology are Gabriela Escobar's 2 passions in life. She quite naturally brought them together in one vast project. She travels the length and breadth of Bolivia to photograph every archaeological site in the country, thus building up an inestimable database for historians the world over. Her work is above all scientific, but it also allows her access to nature's most spectacular aspect. Then, the artist takes over.
Es como un caos.
It's chaos.
Casi surrealista.
This landscape is almost surreal. The geometric forms are really awesome.
Para hacer fotografías es
It's just incredible to photograph. I like the texture of the rocks. It's a kind of construction in the middle of nowhere. So just looking at the forms, your imagination takes wings.
Solo al ver las formas.
Thanks to photography and archaeology, Gabriela is exploring the region of Sur-Lipetz in the southern part of the country. It's also an ideal way to meet the locals, who are often an excellent source of information on the region's history. In Bolivia, nature is a wonderful subject for an artist like Gabriela. Standing before the geysers of the Sol de Mañana, she gives free rein to her emotions.
Nunca me canso de la fotografía.
I will never get tired of photography. It's soothing, and it's definitely something I need. It's my gateway to creativity, which can spring up at any moment. For me, it means savoring everything that's all around and capturing it in an image.
Y tratar de capturarlo en una imagen.
Laguna Verde, close to the borders of Chile and Argentina, is surrounded by majestic volcanoes. This unreal lake is at an altitude of 4,300 meters. Its rich emerald color comes from the arsenic and other minerals suspended in the water. The vestiges of a building and a corral bear witness to very ancient human activity here.
The region's entire economy was based on the transportation of goods by llama. It's the only animal that can survive at this altitude and at such low temperatures. It seems that this was the route they took. The people passing through here lived lower down, around the Salar, for example, the vast salt flat. It's easier to get food in the valleys, and the temperature is much more bearable. The people who would pass through here carried on trade with the valleys.
Eso es. Y ahora mírame.
Now look at me.
Eso es.
That hand down and the other one up.
Sí.
That's it.
Exacto. Manejando.
Wherever Gabriela goes, her photography is a way to connect with the people she meets along the way. Like Vidal. He was born and raised in this inhospitable region. He has offered to take Gabriela up to the Laguna Colorada, one of Bolivia's most beautiful sites, set in one of its wildest landscapes.
When's their laying season?
In mid-December, On the lake, that's where they lay. They scrape the mud up with their beak into a sort of nest where they lay a single egg. One egg for each flamenco couple. Look, this is a good spot to shoot from. I think if we get any closer, they'll fly off. As a kid, I used to come here a lot to gather eggs. Then we'd put them in boxes and take them to Chile by llama or donkey to sell them in San Pedro. And there we'd trade 5 eggs for a crate of pears. That's how it worked in Chile. What do you think of that? When I reached 8, I had still never seen a car. The first one I saw, I thought, what is that thing? When we saw the first tourists arrive, we would run and hide. We were afraid. These people with beards and blonde hair, where do they come from? Some other planet? Then, after, it was okay.
Es una sensación que no se puede explicar con palabras.
The feelings you experience here are difficult to put into words. This landscape is one of a kind. It's something that you feel deep within yourself. It's very moving. I would like to keep all this in a box so that it would never disappear and stay just like it is forever.
At San Juan's elementary school, Monday is Citizenship Day, as in all Bolivia's schools. After singing the national anthem, the children present what they've learned in the cultural workshops. Gabriela is eager to share her knowledge. With her visits to her country's schools, she's trying to make the younger generation aware of the importance of the past and the need to preserve the archaeological sites.
Do any of you know about the necropolis here in San Juan? Raise your hand if you know of it. You know about it. And who are our ancestors? Our grandparents. But our ancestors are the grandparents of the grandparents of the grandparents of our grandparents.
Bolivia has a very rich history. The different civilizations that inhabited the country before the arrival of the conquistadors in the 16th century have all left their mark on the land. Gabriela is not trying to give a master class, but rather to plant a little seed of history in the mind of each of these children.
Archaeology is the science that studies the past.
Very good. Ephraim has given the best answer. Let's give him a little hand.
After the classwork, a field trip to the necropolis on the outskirts of town.
Everybody's going to take a look at what's here in the tomb. Before, people used to believe that when you died, you passed over to another world. So they would place small objects belonging to the deceased in the tomb. Here, we explain just what an archaeological site is, what would be the best way to preserve it, because the site could be a source of revenue for the community. In the future, it will be the responsibility of these children to take care of it. The idea is also that when the children go home, they tell their parents, "Today, an archaeologist talked to us about the place where our ancestors lived." And so the parents also start to be aware that it's important to preserve these sites.
If you've never experienced the joy of climbing, it's hard to understand why one would spend hours of effort to get the top of a rock in the heart of the desert. But for the Alan Morales brothers, it's simply a game they play together every time they can get out of the city and take refuge in nature. Miguel and Diego have the same interests. Both of them are firefighters, mountain guides, and paragliding champions. Miguel and Diego live in downtown La Paz. Together, they've set up a little company that organizes paragliding flights and mountain treks.
A long time ago, we went on an expedition near Sahama with my father and his friends. The last day on the way back to the city, the car broke down. There we were, 2 kids, a 5- and 10-year-old, abandoned in a 4-wheel drive for 8 to 10 hours because my father and his friend went off looking for help somewhere. I don't know exactly how long it was, but an entire day on our own wondering, where are they? They are going to come back, aren't they? At night, the cold was overwhelming because we hadn't planned on sleeping out, and we didn't have any sleeping bags, no tent, nothing. But looking back, that was really a good experience, our first taste of adventure.
Not long ago, Miguel had a serious paragliding accident. When he got out of the hospital, it was his brother Diego who encouraged him to start flying again. For Miguel's comeback flight, they gave themselves a challenge: to fly over the Salar de Uyuni, the vast salt flat in the far southwest of the country. What is it they're hoping to share together? Tons of dust, encounters, and adventures in the country's high-altitude deserts.
Come closer if you want. You'll see better. The most important thing in victim transportation is coordination.
First stage, Sajama. This village, perched up at 4,200 meters in the middle of the desert, is inhabited by only a few families of llama herders. As volunteer firefighters, Miguel and Diego decide to mix business with pleasure by giving a first aid course to the rangers of Sajama National Park.
This is very important to us. We do have a small infirmary here in the village, but it's fairly rudimentary. And this course is very useful.
For example, if an accident happens up in the mountains on the trail to the summit of Sajama, it's a long way to go from there back down to here. It's very important that we know how to help the victim and also to know the best way to make a stretcher and how to transport a person, because the ambulance can't get up there.
Mr. Santiago, hello.
I'm Miguel from La Paz. How you doing? We heard you had a little problem. Where does it hurt?
My neck hurts. I had an accident. I was riding and the horse fell onto me, onto my side.
The two brothers always have their first aid kit with them. They've been trained to monitor vital signs in all kinds of situations, sometimes extreme, like accidents on the road or in the mountains.
I'll apply some ointment, then we'll give you a neck brace, okay? That should put you right.
Being a volunteer firefighter is a big part of my life. It also fits right in with my lifestyle. It allows me to keep helping others, whether it's fighting fires or a medical intervention like here. It's important that you take things easy now. It's going to be kind of awkward to move around with the neck brace. You're going to move a bit like a robot. Whatever you're doing, be careful. You feel better now?
Santiago doesn't have much to offer the two brothers, but a mate of coca leaves is always welcome in these regions where the altitude is hard to endure.
But this is so we can identify them. There are several herders up here, each with his own flock. But sometimes they get mixed up during the day. This way, we can tell them apart. You know, sort them out.
Non ascolti, dica. Vaya.
We like doing this, so we seize the opportunity when we can. We're lucky to be able to help people out with something very simple, something small, but very concrete. And that could be truly useful. When you do that, you feel better because you're helping people who really need it. You know, that's a good thing, right? Sharing what you know puts a little smile on the trip.
Miguel and Diego continue their voyage into the country's deep south. The rutted road is taking a heavy toll on their vehicle, and the vibrations plunge them into silence. Miguel clenches his teeth because his back is hurting him. He's afraid he won't be able to fly. From time to time, someone appears from nowhere and reminds us that people actually manage to live in these steppes with the searing heat by day and glacial cold by night.
We're in the middle of nowhere. It's absolutely beautiful, far from everything. Every spot we pass by, we wonder if we'll be able to fly, to climb. What can we do out here? In the morning, we watch the clouds roll by, how they shift. It's like a drug. It's a vice that keeps us in its grip all day long.
The Salar de Uyuni is a vast salt flat, the largest in the world. In the rainy season, the salar is covered by water and it becomes impossible to cross. And even during the rest of the year, it's dangerous to cross, for the weight of the vehicles can break through the crust of salt.
Oh, wow. Qué cool. Poco pensado estar en un lugar así.
It's hard to imagine such a place.
Tan poco y
There's so
tanto
little,
para ver a la vez.
and yet there's so much to see. It's awesome.
Alucinante.
Totalmente, ciencia ficción.
Absolutely. It's something sci-fi, a parallel universe. We're here above the rest of the world. The salt is like a layer of clouds, and below all that, there's the rest of the planet with its everyday problems. It's really something else.
Máscara.
The balaclava is to protect your skin from the sun, because you can get a nasty burn. I wear gloves too, so my hands don't get hurt. Boots to protect me from the water. The salt burns. If you have any scratches, the salt gets in and it stings.
Hello, how you doing? We want to cross the salt flat. Hi, my name's Miguel. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Diego. How are you?
Do you know if it's rained a lot? Can we get across the flat?
You can get across easy. Didn't rain at all. No problem.
Should we go this way or that way?
No, go that way.
Preciosa, irrompible, con ojos de esmeralda. Noche y día me pregunto si mañana me cantará la melodía de su infancia. Me gustaría murmurarla con ella. Hay una sombra que se aleja como el ángel de la botella, jineteando un tordillo. Quisiera acompañarlo y pietinar la tierra añorada Pachamama hasta el amanecer de un nuevo día.
Me encanta este país.
I really love this country. We're coming to the end of our adventure. We had a great week. We revisited spots we haven't seen for so many years, since our childhood. It was really great to share it all with my brother, now that we're adults. The only thing we have to do now is make our long-awaited flight.
The two brothers have found the ideal spot to take off. There's no turning back now for Miguel. He wants to prove to himself that his back operation can't keep him from plunging once again into the void.
I haven't flown for a long time. Frankly, I'm a bit scared. But hey, the conditions are pretty good. It's really moving for me to get back up in the air. This flight is the cherry on the cake. Doing what you love the most.
It just fascinates me. It's my whole life. I dropped everything for paragliding. That shows you just how much I love it. It's freedom and purity. You're all alone against the elements. You drink in the scenery. Nature, it fulfills our lives completely. Sometimes, it's also a challenge you give yourself, to see how far you can go, to strive to surpass your own limits, to progress and improve. It's hard to explain. It's something that is just so beautiful.
Peru. Its tale has been told and retold by scores of explorers and adventurers, yet the country remains shrouded in mystery. For mere words cannot capture all the magic working here. The pre-Hispanic civilizations have vanished, taking with them many of their secrets. The whispering of the last Incas harks back to that bygone era. Modern-day Peru is heir to the human ingenuity that was so closely in touch with the upheavals of the earth. The story of Latin America is also that of the Quechua language. Before the arrival of the Spanish and their all-powerful alphabet, culture here was an unwritten, oral tale. Jaime Arauz Chacon is one of those voices that is keeping alive the old world of the Andes, steeped in spirituality. Today, Jaime is on his way to Misminay, a little village 50 kilometers from Cusco. Jaime is a mediator for the Andean communities and has spent an entire year listening to the inhabitants. Access to clean water, discrimination, rural exodus, they've had more than their share of problems. But thanks to Jaime, the village is coming back to life. The farms are once again up and running using the ancestral methods. Jaime always encourages the villagers to conserve their traditional know-how.
My job is to support and accompany the indigenous communities and farmers, to listen, to analyze, and to act as an intermediary, a spokesman to give a voice to these communities. This is one of my roles.
Drinking water is freely available, but they don't have running water in their houses yet. So mornings in Misminay are marked by the constant comings and goings around the fountain. For more than 20 years, Jaime has been penning a detailed inventory of all the living cultural treasures specific to each Andean village.
The traditional Andean weaves represent our way of life. They're a testimony, our original writing. They tell our story right up to the present day. All the people of the Andes have suffered discrimination on account of the clothing, the color of skin, because of illiteracy. So we have suffered for all these reasons, and it's still going on. It's not something in the past. No. To avoid this discrimination, we've abandoned our own clothing and adopted other styles. But doing that is even worse. We disappear. We end up being nothing.
We have chicken, wings, breasts, drumsticks, carcasses, necks. We have it all, dear customers.
Pound of each. Here you are, my little lady.
How's business?
So-so.
Uno. A ver, caserita, tenemos fruta para sus niños, verdura para que cocinen, pollo, pescado, casera, granaría, granada, sandía, tomate, zapallo, cebolla, zanahoria casera tenemos, pollo, ala, pecho, espinazo, cogote y cazuela tenemos, calentísimo.
I have to visit all the communities that need me. I get around by car, on foot, on horseback, by motorcycle, if one's available. Whatever comes along. Buses like this one are my home away from home.
Caserita. Toma, caserita. Más caja, ¿cuántos hay? 4.30.
Necesitamos enseñar al mundo.
We need to share our teachings with the world. We have to communicate with Mother Nature, to renew our contact with her, and look at nature differently, not as just a resource to destroy, but as a large house where we can live well.
The mountains of Peru are full of treasures. For thousands of years, the locals in Majas have been working the salt pans carved out by their ancestors.
The salt that we're harvesting here is the purest. We use it for human consumption. It's called fleur de sel. Then we have another darker layer of salt that we scrape up last. We use it for fertilizer, for the plants, and also as medicine. It has good medicinal qualities.
The 520 families of the community work together as a cooperative. They share the land and the work, respecting the Quechua system of mutual aid called Aini, strength in solidarity. Jaime is a politically committed artist. He was first a school teacher before becoming professor of art. He paints to share his knowledge, a true craftsman of the collective memory. His works are not for sale, they're intended for those who can't read. He makes ritual agricultural calendars, veritable encyclopedias specific to each village. It takes between 1 and 2 years of observation and meticulous work to produce one of these paintings. Jaime has done more than 20.
Each village has its own notion of time. Each community has its cycles and way of living, their way of making clothes, of building their houses, their own customs and traditions. So each village has its own calendar. It gives an overall view of our cosmovision: Andean, Quechua, Aymara, and Amazonian. The Andean cosmovision is a way of interpreting our world and our culture. To get a clear picture of our cosmovision, think of a well. When you drop a pebble in, it makes waves that always go from the center outward. Once they reach the wall, the waves come back. We do the same thing when we deepen our knowledge. Once we reach a certain advanced level of understanding, we must return to the essentials, the basics, to be able to pass this knowledge on. Otherwise, we would never be able to teach.
The site of Moray symbolizes the Andean cosmovision. This was a research laboratory where the Incas created new species that could resist the cold and the altitude. They were able to recreate different microclimates thanks to this configuration of concentric terraces.
If we were to use this site as it were used back then we'd produce better seeds for the whole world. We could once again start to learn from this site. It's as if we were in the womb here. It's returning to our mother's belly and being reborn.
Jaime is setting out for an encounter with a remote community, the Queros. Their village of Quicos, 4,200 meters up, has just recently been made accessible with a dirt road. Before, they were isolated from the rest of the world. The Queros are considered the last representatives of the Inca civilization.
What's his name?
Mestiza.
That's a fine alpaca. How often do you vaccinate them?
Every 6 months.
We must not count the animals, because it's a secret. If we count them, they'll stop reproducing. So we mustn't count them if we want to have a lot of them. We just say we have a herd of animals, but we don't know how many.
In the course of a year, Jaime will spend 1 week every month in this village. He will eat and sleep with each of the families. He will listen to what they have to say, but he will also warn them of certain dangers. Mining prospection, evangelistic missions, the shrinking of the glaciers. There's no shortage of worries.
So, my brother, tell me about your life. We will speak and open our hearts to one another.
There are new things that have come to our village. The road, lighting, electricity, they have opened our eyes. Things are better than before. Now we want to stay here. Those who leave, they leave to find work.
Vaqueros want to show Jaime a very important site, a sacred cave known to only those initiated. They're going to perform a ceremony there to help Jaime in his work.
Approach, spirits. Come take care of our little brother, that he always be welcome everywhere, even in the big city. That he be blessed with gold and silver. In the name of all the spirits.
They are the guardians of the teachings and acknowledged as the heirs of the last Inca communities, that age-old culture. They have the power to communicate with the mountains at all times. It's a fundamental way of life, an ongoing conversation with Mother Earth, with the apus, the mountain gods, and other guardian spirits. The dialogue with them is absolutely essential, crucial. If we don't express our spirituality, we cease to be ourselves. We lose our culture, which gives birth to our music, our clothes, seeds. It gives us everything we share, what we experience day after day.
On our land, the land of the Keros, we don't use any chemical substances. Our potatoes and other produce are natural. This is why we perform ceremonies with offerings to the earth. It's to thank her. We perform them as they were done in the time of the Incas. We treat the earth with respect, and we do it in secret. We don't reveal everything to the public, to the city dwellers.
Dominga is the chosen one of the spirits. She has a special role in the community. It's her duty to summon the apus, the mountain gods.
It's our Pachamama who gives us such beautiful potatoes. If she were not willing, we wouldn't harvest anything.
The danger for all communities with a cultural heritage is alienation, acculturation, assimilation into the dominant culture. It's a danger for all of us. What we possess is unique. If we lose it, it would be impossible to get it back, or in any case, very difficult. We could always do it as a hobby, a bit of folklore for special occasions. But to live it would be nearly impossible. It's a challenge.
To speak to the mountains and listen to the earth. In Peru, the ground trembles and the mountains rumble, in tune with the Pacific Ring of Fire. In his own way, Jose del Carpio also has the power to interpret the seismic music of the Earth. The Pinchoyo geyser, over 4,300 meters up, spits jets of steam heated in the bowels of the Earth to over 85 degrees Celsius.
Es verdad de que el planeta está vivo.
Our planet is very much alive.
Vamos a hacer unas lecturas.
We take measurements,
y ver cuánto de
we take its
temperatura tiene la
temperature to
Tierra.
see if it's sick or healthy.
Si es que está enferma o está
In fact,
sana. Pero en
the
realidad,
activity generated in this zone
actividad que se
is
genera en
caused
esta
either
zona
by the volcanoes or
puede
by
ser
the
por
Earth's
causas
internal
volcánicas,
dynamics.
Estamos frente a un volcán y también por la dinámica interior que tiene la Tierra. Cuando veo este tipo de
When I see this type of phenomenon, like this geyser here, I think of it as a window to the inside of the Earth.
hacia el interior de la Tierra y tú
And I'd
quieras
like to go
ingresar
through it
y ver qué
to see
cosa
what's
más hay
there
en
deeper
profundidad.
down.
Es algo emocionante, es algo
It's moving,
que te llama la
and
atención
it
como
fascinates me as a scientist.
científico. Por eso es que nos
And that's why I
gusta
love my
hacer
job.
este tipo de trabajo.
Jose is a volcanologist at the IGP, the Institute of Geophysics of Peru. He's in charge of monitoring the seismic and volcanic activity in the southern part of the country. The region of Arequipa is home to all of Peru's active volcanoes. Jose, assisted by Omar, is going to monitor the Sabancaya volcano. Its name means tongue of fire.
La sismología, en otras palabras, lo que hace
This seismological device here records the pulse of the Earth.
es registrar los latidos de la Tierra. A manera de un
It's like a doctor's stethoscope.
cuando tú vas
When
al
he checks
doctor,
your heartbeat.
empiezas a ver tu corazón.
This instrument works
De
the
la
same
misma
way,
funciona este equipo, pero
but
con
for
la
the
Tierra.
Earth.
No hay
It's the
otro
best
método que
method
lo
we've
supere
come up
hasta la
with so
fecha.
far, and at
Y
the
en el
observatory,
observatorio
we're
nos ha
collecting a
dado
lot of data.
The device is buried. A solar panel supplies it with energy. Jose will come back in 2 months to collect the precious data. The Colca Canyon is the second deepest in the world, 3,200 meters from cliff edge to river, twice the depth of the Grand Canyon. The considerable seismic activity has given birth to a huge fault, 100 kilometers long, inexorably carved out by the river. This geologist's paradise has also attracted condors. There are more than 40 nesting here. Their 3.5-meter wingspan allows them to soar effortlessly.
The real Aymara name of this site is Charlia. That means it's a sacred site where we worship a divinity. The condor was very important for the people here, and still is, even today, because it represents the world above, or the soul of a person after death. And where do souls live in the Andean beliefs? In the mountains. And where do condors live?
In the mountains.
The condors were here before the Incas.
In Peru, the sight of nature driven by mysterious forces has always fascinated people. It fires the imagination and rekindles their beliefs.
The Incas always considered mountains and volcanoes as sacred sites. During our expeditions, we've come upon mummies in fetal position at the bottom of ravines and inside craters, because they believed that volcanoes, as well as mountains, were the bowels of the earth. Placing their dead in these sacred sites was their way of sending them off to another life.
Era regresarlos a otra vida.
Tutupaca, Yucamane, Misti, Tixani, Pichu Pichu, Chachani, Ubinas, Hainaputina. This is not an incantation, but the melodious names of the volcanoes, all very much alive. Their breath tints the sky. Their rumblings make the altiplano tremble. They all inspire the fear of a massive explosion. A few, like Ubinas, are monitored very closely. In 2006, the population living on its slopes went through living hell. A huge cloud of hot ash engulfed the village of Querapi.
Querapi is 4 kilometers from the crater, and the quantity of ash that rained down on the village was very harmful for the villagers. In 2006, it was a scene of total confusion. No one was prepared for a volcanic eruption, so eventually the authorities evacuated the village.
The village of Ubinas, a mere 2 kilometers from Querapi, suffered similar torments, but is still inhabited. In the background, the summit of the volcano veiling the horizon remains an ominous threat to the villagers. Jose visits once a month to discuss the risks of an eruption with the local authorities.
Claudio. Hola. ¿Cómo estás?
Ubinas is in the orange alert zone on this risk chart. We're going to downgrade it to yellow alert. It will put the villagers more at ease, right?
Yes. The people here are well aware of the danger. They respect your recommendations.
Jose can always count on Melquiades, one of the villagers, to lend a helping hand. He's been climbing the volcano since he was 7.
I'm always curious to climb up Ubinas and see what's down in the bottom of the crater. I've always liked that. I go up there a few times a week. I've gone up 3 or 4 times this month, all on my own. Nobody asked me to do it, but I wanted to see the crater lake. I'd never seen it. It's beautiful. It's one more experience, and I'll never forget it.
What day did you go up? When did you see the lake?
April 3rd.
Nos encontramos en el mismo cráter del volcán Ubinas. Observamos en el fondo del cráter del volcán Ubinas una laguna natural. Ahí observamos.
The most amazing thing about these expeditions up the volcanoes is working at high altitudes. The volcanoes we monitor here in Peru are around 6,000 meters above sea level. It's exhausting, but it lifts our spirits to know that we're working for the common good.
Climbing Ubinas is a breathtaking adventure in every sense of the word. At more than 5,600 meters, the air is very thin. Today, the volcano seems to be dozing peacefully in its bed of snow, a deceptive calm, for this crew has first-hand knowledge of the volcano's other facet. On August 6, 2015, they had front-row seats when the volcano offered them a stunning spectacle.
Nos encontramos en el mismo cráter del volcán Ubinas. Observamos los impactos. Está muy caliente. La zona de bombas inmensa.
Corre de frente al hueco y calculas su largo y su ancho con pasos. Calcula su largo y su ancho con pasos. Y ahí puede tomar foto porque ya no hay viento. Tomen foto de una vez.
Copiado, doctor, copiado. Ya hemos tomado fotos y filmado. Un cráter de 23 por 15.
Once we were working in the volcano, and they warned us on the radio that the activity had jumped, and we were right there in the caldera.
Apúrense, tomen foto, varias filmen y vénganse, regresen, ya no se queden mucho. Y no se, por favor, no se queden mucho, regresen.
We were pretty quick to react. They told us to evacuate, and when we were halfway out of the volcano, there was an explosion.
Son las 8:48 minutos. Nuevamente hubo una gran explosión en el volcán Ubinas, así como estamos viendo en estas imágenes. Saca foto, saca foto, saca foto.
It was incredible. We realized that the work we were doing in the observatory was beginning to produce results. So the risk that we, a handful of scientists, are taking help us on other volcanoes like El Misti, which has a huge population nearby.
El Misti means the gentleman. 1 million people live at its foot. It awoke in January 2016, emitting very noxious gases, a huge risk for the population of Arequipa, which is growing constantly and keeps settling closer to the Colossus. In a long-past geological era, an unimaginably powerful eruption provoked a huge wave of molten ash, a flow 18 kilometers long that is now quarried for stone. This soft stone was used in the construction of Arequipa and gave it its nickname, the White City.
Nature gives us these incredible volcanic explosions, but at the same time, she leaves behind the material we need to rebuild. Over the decades, with all the seismic activity that has occurred in Arequipa, the cathedral was destroyed and rebuilt countless times. These are the two things that life offers. It gives, and then it takes away. And that's the essence of our existence.
In Peru, nature is intimidating, but doesn't frighten the more adventurous. In this country, there are some men who dare take on the harsh elements. Growing up in the Andes gives one a vertical vision of the world.
Ya, lo tengo. Lo tengo.
I've always liked challenges. It's guided my life. It's what makes me an adventurer. I love engineering. I love technology. Being in a place that's hard to get to, where you won't find many people. There are so many things that inspire me every day. Everyday life inspires me.
Welcome to the everyday world of Ario Ferry, a man held aloft by his soaring imagination.
This is the entrance, a transparent cupola to get the view of the Ollantaytambo Valley. Here, you have the wooden floor. This capsule will be the dining room. The elliptical part here will be transparent, again for the view on the valley. And from here to here, in the back, you'll have the raw rock. This will be fastened to the cliff face. Here you'll have grottos, plants, hanging orchids. When it rains, the water will run off underneath. And the other door leads to the bathroom, which will also have a transparent floor.
Artist, craftsman, and self-taught architect, Ario has never abandoned his childhood dreams of fortresses and tree houses.
Bring the door over, we'll see if it fits.
Inspired by tales of adventure and space exploration, fascinated by his nights spent hanging from a cliff, Ario brought all his passions together to invent a system of inhabitable pods, futuristic shelters clinging to the mountainside.
Firma. Ya, sí es, esta es. Perfecto.
It's on a lush green slope of the sacred valley of the Incas that Ario decided to hang his dream. A dream built on an unavoidable fact of life. Absolutely everything has to be backpacked up to the site. No roads, no trails to reach the pods nearly 400 meters up. A folly earned by sweat and toil. It's a pharaonic project, which began with installing the Via Ferrata. 900 metal bars fixed to the cliff face to facilitate the ascent. It takes an hour and a half to reach the site. Ario can always count on his good friend Americo, a mountain guide like himself.
The story of this Via Ferrata began when I first came to the valley. I was staggered by the beauty of the mountains here. There wasn't many mountain activities, and it seemed to me that the time was ripe to launch an original venture. I wanted to spend as much time as possible in the mountains. But with trips of several days, I was away from my family for too long.
To share his passion for the void with as many people as possible, Ario forged forward and created the Sky Lodge, which has been open for business since July 2013.
The Sky Lodge is a guest house. You could also call it a refuge, a sleeping capsule, or a base camp. I call it a vertical living pod. This one sleeps 4 persons. They can spend the night suspended in the air with an incredible view on the sacred valley and feel what it's like to sleep on a cliff face and almost what it's like to be a condor.
Two of the 3 pods are for the brave guests. The third one is for the logistics, a sort of base camp when working on the site.
Una sopita caliente, qué rico.
Now they're ready to add a 4th capsule. That will be the dining room.
Please bless what we are making. My brother and I offer it to you with our hearts. Watch over us.
Gracias, Kuno. Le pedimos permiso para hacer un hueco.
We kindly ask your permission to drill a hole.
You have it?
I've got a good hold. Brace yourself.
I'm set.
It took Ario 6 months of research to find the right cliff for his project. For in the sacred valley of the Incas, every slope, every summit, every crest harbors relics that are now protected.
The Incas were great mountaineers. It was hard to find a cliff face without any ruins. I think they must have even come through here. The Incas are a constant source of inspiration, with their irrigation channels, the suspended ruins, all without any technology, just their intelligence and the relationship with the apus, the sacred gods. I still think we have that in common, even today.
The Incas were master builders who overcame all the obstacles to living in the high mountains to better rule over the plains. The ruins in Peru have hardly been touched by the ravages of time. They are a testimony to the ingenuity of those visionary architects who, like Ario, challenged the limits of the possible and erected unthinkable structures in the most improbable places.
I think my passion for construction began with my first Lego set. That, plus I was living in a place where the only way to have anything was to make it yourself. We didn't have any money to buy things, and everything had to be brought in from far away. There weren't even any stores. So I've been doing this all my life. I've always built what I needed as I went along. It took me several years to construct the Sky Lodge. First, we had to find the materials, which didn't exist in Peru at the time. Then there was the design and the engineering, and at the same time the location spotting, testing the sites to see how the rock fractures. Then moving on to construction, finding the right people, soldering the aluminum. It was a whole process that evolved as it went along. The total time I've spent suspended on the cliff face is close to a year, with days of 12 to 14 hours.
Oh, gracias, papicha. Yo creo que la pared y nosotros ya.
My relationship with the cliff face is very intense.
Larga.
Now, we're coming into the home stretch. We're installing the safety cables to sleep safe and snug. Americo, how do you feel?
I feel just fine inside. How about you?
I'm over the moon. Just another day at the office.
When he's not hanging out at his office, Ario can enjoy his other passion on the Urubamba River a few hundred meters lower down. His coat of arms, the piole, and the paddle. Driven by his lust for life and fueled by adrenaline, he still has the taste for risk and exploration acquired in his childhood when he capered about the peaks of the Cordillera Blanca. A jack of all trades, he used to be a whitewater guide and spent 15 years running rivers the world over. Then he came back to drop anchor in Peru.
Speaking of rivers, I'm like a fish in water. When I used to work on the river, I couldn't even last a single day out of water because I felt as if I were drying out. I was anxious. Something was missing. I had a kind of craving, and it was a craving for water. It's thanks to the kayak that I am the person I am today. The kayak formed me as it forms a wake in the water.
It's a birthday party here on the banks of Lake Purai. Ario is 36 years old. He's a father of 3 children, and he's celebrating several full lives already. In Peru, they celebrate special occasions around a pachamanca, meaning earth pot. They heat stones for 5 hours, then the food is cooked in direct contact with the elements.
I no longer feel I have to prove anything to anyone, not even to myself. I prefer to have some fun with my children than go off and do something really extreme. I think that's part of the physical and psychological changes a man undergoes when he becomes a father. This lake is a special place where I come to spend time with my family. It's an important place for me that largely inspired my next project. But I decided to install it up on Lake Titicaca because there's so much more space. We have room to move around. We can get a good distance away from the shore. There's an unobstructed view. It's a greater challenge up there.
Ario, always bubbling over with ideas, is fine-tuning his next creation, the Aqua Lodge, a floating transparent capsule like a half bubble meant to drift following his whims on Peru's largest lake, another childhood dream that he will soon share with others. Meanwhile, he has to take care of his other children. The sleeping pods, exposed to the elements at an altitude of more than 3,000 meters, need a lot of maintenance. There's no end of work.
I don't think I'm crazy. What's crazy is wasting your life staring at a computer 8 hours a day. For me, this is just fantastic. This is real living. Nature. This is what keeps us alive, what gives us energy and the will to go on.
Somewhere on Earth is off to Brazil, the largest Latin American country, as vast as a continent. Far from Rio's famous beaches, there is another Brazil where the spirit of adventure and mystery still lingers on. Expedito and Raimundo are brothers. Their lives are inextricably linked to a legendary river, the Paraguaçu, and their boat, a saveiro, that looks like it's straight out of a swashbuckling adventure book. They earn their living with this sailboat. The Nordeste, further north near the equator, is one of Brazil's poorest regions. The Lençóis do Maranhenses on the Atlantic coast is a bewitching sight. Only a few men live in this desert where time itself has evaporated, and the beauty of nature reigns supreme. Joyo's son is right at home in the Lençóis. Roy was born near New York. He landed in Brazil about 30 years ago in the Chapada Diamantina. This history and archaeology enthusiast has become an ardent defender of a vast territory where he roams every day.
I found my spot in the world. It's, I think everyone should look and try to find it. Some people are lucky. I was lucky. I found it.
Brazil is the largest country of South America and the 5th largest of the planet. It's a land of paradox and contrast. Urban sprawls exist side by side with vast, unspoiled regions, still a far cry from the modern world. The forests and rivers are characteristic features of Brazil. When the Europeans discovered this new world, the majestic rivers were their gateways into the vast inland territories. The Paraguaçu is a legendary river. It empties into the Bay of Salvador, the country's 3rd largest city in the state of Bahia on the Atlantic coast, 1,800 kilometers north of Rio. The Paraguaçu River is the home of the last saveiros. These boats are a part of the country's traditions and culture. They even say that the soul of the Brazilian people hovers over Bahia, above All Saints Bay.
We don't go by the clock here. We go by the wind. We know when we set sail, but we never know when we'll get back. That's up to God. We work with nature and the wind. We don't check our watches. The watch is just for the time we set sail. We're free. This is absolute freedom.
The saveiros sail the calm waters of the Paraguaçu and the vast Bay of Salvador. These boats are not made for the open sea, so they always hug the coastline. The runs are short, but still can take several days depending on the winds, currents, and tides. The saveros ship all sorts of freight: sugarcane, fruit, crockery, sand. They may also carry passengers on the odd trip. For the past 15 years, Raimundo and Expedito have been doing the same run between the villages along the river and the city of Salvador. The two brothers are old hands at the saveros, and when they're not working their boat, they live on an island in the bay.
I'd rather live on the boat than in Salvador. It's true, the city is beautiful from a distance, but a lot less when you get closer. I like to see it from out here, or on TV.
The origin of the savero is steeped in mystery. They say that the Portuguese brought sailors from India to train Brazilian shipbuilders. These flat-bottomed craft were perfectly adapted for sailing the rivers and close to the shore. For centuries, the saveros would ship the materials necessary for the construction of the villages and religious buildings, like the São Antonio monastery built in the 17th century by French monks. The Franciscans established this mission on the river to convert the native populations. São Antonio is the country's second oldest Catholic church. When the monastery was being built, the Paraguaçu River was Brazil's major commercial artery. After a day of sailing, the savero skippers moor their boats on the Ilha do Mare, the island of the sea, a little patch of land in the middle of the Bay of Salvador. The two brothers have to take on several hundred kilos of freshly cut bananas before the heat becomes too oppressive.
There's a big demand for this kind of banana because it's natural, sweet, very sweet. Banana shipping makes up a good part of our business. Well, there's not very much else to transport here. Doesn't pay much. But we managed to do a lot with a very little. And thank God, because this is how we get along. I know this river very well. I've been making this trip for 15 years. I sailed this river so many times with my father when I was little. I know it by heart. I know where the rocks and sandbars are. I know where it's safe to anchor. Sometimes I'll think about all the time I've spent on this river. It really moves me. I love this boat. I love traveling, even if it doesn't bring in much money.
Times are tough for the Saveros. Even though the country is enjoying an economic boom, it's harder and harder for them to compete with the trucking industry. On the Paraguaçu, the sailors' experience is handed down from one generation to the next. Raimundo and Expedito learned everything about their craft from their father. He taught them the ancestral sailing skills, but that's not all.
If a Savero skipper doesn't know how to cook, he doesn't eat. 3 days at sea, 3 days without food, we'd get home with an empty belly, shriveled up, starving.
Tonight is football night on the radio, and the Saveros are headed for Salvador, where they'll deliver the bananas. At dawn, the boat comes within sight of Salvador's skyscrapers, the world of the big city and the world of the sailors. Each goes its own way, ignoring the other. The little world of the Saveros lives on traditional beliefs and superstitions. Every time Expedito and Raimundo cross the bay, they place their fate in the hands of the goddess of the sea. The bananas are swallowed up by this remarkable bustling hive on Salvador's port, one of Latin America's largest covered markets. They don't stay very long, hardly an hour, just enough time to stock up on supplies. For Expedito, the less time spent in the city, the better. Today, this 100-year-old boat is getting a second festive youth as a collective taxi. For over the past few days, the entire country has been gearing up for Carnival with its intoxicating rhythms.
Hello. I've got a problem with the mast. The last one wasn't very good either. This one isn't straight at all. It shifted, so it's tilted too far back, and the Savero is sluggish. The other mast had the same problem. It leant back.
Why didn't you come sooner?
Because we've got this problem with the mast.
If you'd come sooner, it'd already be fixed. It's nothing. You come in here on a Saturday, it's my day with the kids. It's bad timing. You know how we Brazilians are. We'll do it on Monday. I'll take the mast off, cut it, do it the way you want.
Meanwhile, they have to replace a faulty pulley, the only mechanical part of the boat. It's up at the top of the mast, at the top of a 12-meter tree trunk.
It's very dangerous. He's really brave to climb that mast. I'm not that brave. I'm not macho enough.
Just 2 shipyards in Brazil still build saveros, and only about 10 of these boats are still sailing. Where the river meets the ocean is where the savero's fate is played out. Raimundo and Expedito live a simple life, following the whims of the wind, the current, and the sea.
I enjoy what I do. If you don't like what you do, it's not worth the effort. I really love my life. It's harder in winter, but in summer, with a gentle breeze, it's just great. Such peace.
The saveros have remained unchanged for centuries. There are no blueprints to construct these boats. The secrets of the saveros remain locked away in the memory of the rivermen. A strange land. It looks like a desert that the rains have not abandoned. In the Lençóis do Maranhenses, a mystical alchemy has blended everything together. This is a scorched landscape made up of ocean, wind, sand, and the fresh water of the lagoons. Joyason is 25 years old. He's treading the land of his childhood. He lives in a small town 2 days' walk from this spot, here where he was born. Whenever he can, he comes back to the Lençóis to visit his parents who live in this desert near the equator in Brazil's Nordeste region.
Eu gosto aqui mais porque eu fico com a liberdade, né, do que eu quero fazer.
Here I'm free. In town, you're not really free to do what you like.
O que a gente quer fazer porque
everyone has their own little space.
Então, quando eu chego aqui,
when I come here, almost all of it is mine.
Então eu faço o que eu quero.
It's like a dream come true. I'm at peace, and that doesn't happen in town.
A gente não fica muito à vontade.
Before, there was no one living here. In the 1950s, Joyason's family, fleeing a severe drought in the Sertão, an arid inland region of Brazil, decided to settle in an oasis in the Lençóis. To survive, Joyason's ancestors came to a desert where fresh water can be found just beneath the surface of the sand. Joyason is always glad to see his horse when he comes back. He named him Great Tiger, and he's an ideal mount for galloping across the dunes. In the rainy season, countless freshwater lagoons form on the surface. They're not a mirage like you'd find in other deserts the world over. They're very real. Lençóis means linen in Portuguese, and indeed, this white expanse looks like a sheet dried by the sun and buffeted by the wind. The rainy season has just begun. It lasts 6 months and completely transforms the landscape. The scorching heat and the influence of the ocean, the Lençóis suffer the effects of the weather. The lagoons are formed by water from aquifers lying just beneath the surface of the sand. This bounty of fresh water is the source of life in this arid environment. In just a few weeks, the plant and animal life reflourish in the Lençóis lagoons after lying dormant through months of drought.
Olha, essa é uma pininga.
It's a paninga.
Difícil a gente encontrar.
They're quite scarce.
Ela vive numa lagoa.
It lives in the lagoons, in the water for 6 months, and then it burrows down into the sand for 6 months.
Então ela é muito privilegiada, ela está
It's lucky to be able to live like that in the lagoons. I protect them from the predators. I've always done that. I'm going to take this one and move it to a deeper lagoon because I think it's not doing too well here.
Então é isso.
How to grasp the dimensions of this bewitching land? In this vast desert, distances are measured in days. Joyason has learned to adapt to this environment where man-made time evaporates and one has to cling to life.
Eu nasci e me criei aqui na oásis chamada
I was born
Baixa
here.
Grande, né? Então quando eu tinha
I grew up in the
7
Baixa
anos,
Grande
eu
oasis.
comecei a andar com meu pai.
When I was 7, I started going out with my father to tend the livestock.
Então a gente passava 2,
We'd go out into the
3
Lençóis for 2-3 days at a time. We'd sleep outside, no tent or anything. The dunes would be our walls, our shelter. And to sleep, we'd dig out a sort of bed in the sand.
Uma cama e aí dorme.
Joyason is on his way to visit his community on the vast beaches that border the desert. During the rainy season, fishermen set up temporary encampments on the shore. Fishing is the principal activity and the main source of revenue for these communities. It's a collective effort, everyone doing their part. Then they share out the catch among the families.
We got a lot of fish, and we're going to catch even more. It's not always like this. It depends on the season. Sometimes we don't catch anything. Today we'll get 20, 30 kilos, but sometimes you end up with no more than 5 or 6 fish in the net. It depends. We dry them and then we sell them. We could sell these in 2 days. It depends on the number of buyers. The fish we don't sell will allow us to get through the next 3 or 4 days before we go out fishing again. And that's how we manage.
Joyason's family lives here. In the dry season, they tend their flocks. The rest of the time, they farm and fish. The inhabitants of the Lenchois live almost completely on their own, cut off from the rest of the world in their 2 oases. Nature is not very generous here, but they do manage to grow vegetables and some fruit. In the rainy season, they harvest cashew nuts, which they then sell or barter in the neighboring villages.
The cashew harvest begins with the rainy season. But since the shell is very fragile, the rain can ruin the nuts. If water gets inside, the nut rots and it's no good anymore. Out of 50 kilos of cashew nuts, we sometimes end up with no more than 20 kilos that are good. The rest gets damaged by the rain.
Joyason grew up on this land, far from the bustling world, here where nature and beauty are so much more imposing than man. This landscape of shifting sand and water radiates a certain harmony. The Lenchois do Maranhenses are a haven where the inhabitants seem to be waiting for something. The Lenchois possess a fascinating allure, tinted with colors of a voyage in counterpoint to every other place on Earth.
I'm proud to live in and be part of this place. For me, it's a dream. It's the best place in the world, that's for sure. This is my place. It's wonderful. I'm going to stay here. I'm really happy. I'll never leave. I think I'll stay here forever.
The Chapada Diamantina, situated less than 500 kilometers from the Atlantic coast, is a land of mountains, canyons, and wide open spaces. In the late 1970s, Roy was 30 years old and living in the United States, dreaming of adventure. Then he discovered Brazil.
When I first came to the Chapada Diamantina, no one ever visited this place. There was no road up, no way to get here. And I said to myself, I said, wow, I found it, this is the place. And it was just like love at first sight. I really didn't decide, it was decided for me. And the place just grabbed me. And I said, wow, yeah, I can handle that. I love it. So I just stayed. Just never even thought about leaving. It's just a great place. I found my spot in the world. I think everyone should look and try to find it. Some people are lucky. I was lucky. I found it.
In the mid-19th century, the Chapada Diamantina was the scene of an incredible diamond rush. Thousands of adventurers flocked here to try their luck. Roy is going to spend the night in the mountains, in an old diamond prospector's cabin. Roy fought intensely to protect the Chapada Diamantina. He campaigned for the region to be declared a natural reserve. Then in the 1980s, the Brazilian government decided to create a natural park. And since there has to be someone to manage it, Roy was quite naturally recruited for the job.
Yeah, I said, well, it sounded like a really great thing, and it was interesting. But basically, they just gave me a .38 gun and a badge and a Jeep, and said, "Go get them, make a park." So I was director and the guard and the secretary and the driver. It was everything in one. It was only me. So out in the middle of 1,500 square kilometers of park. So I was a prophet in the wilderness. I had been a professional student in the United States, going to college forever, and I burned out, and I just was working a bit in the United States, just traveling a bit there, but I didn't have any direction. I didn't have any idea of what I really wanted to do. So I just kind of threw the dice in the air and just saw what came up, and it really changed my life. I expected to spend 2 or 3 years just doing something different, but it just totally, completely changed my life, and it just introduced me to a whole new country, a whole new culture, and a utility that I didn't have in the U.S. I can't even imagine what I'd be doing in the U.S. if I was there now, but here I have a function. I'm doing something that I feel is important.
Every day, Roy hikes the trails of these mountains that nourish the dreams of thousands of diamond hunters and adventurers. To repay this country for all it has given him, Roy has become an amateur historian.
Now just to show you, this is it's an old mining structure here. It was a corrida. They would put water down this ramp here. 90% of the work of a diamond mine here is bringing water to your claim, to your mine, because what diamond mining is separating a couple of milligrams of carbon crystals of diamonds from tons of sand and rock and mud and other things. And the only way you can do that is with water. So the mountains are full of aqueducts here, small ones, big ones, all over the place that bring the water from the river or collect it from rainfall and direct it toward their mines.
All those dreams of riches vanished along with the forests, but the forests will regrow. The precious gems swept along by the rivers are quite scarce now, and nature has reclaimed its own. The Chapada Diamantina has reverted to its wild state.
It is tea. It's organic material. It's not iron or anything like that. It's just the fallen leaves and trees and sticks from the vegetation that the rain just passes through them and picks up the color just like tea. It is tea.
Usar a imagem da barraca. A filha da gata saindo da imagem. Todo tchau.
Roy has become a local personality. Thanks to his efforts, the Chapada Diamantina is once again a land of exploration, a paradise for hikers and people in search of wide open spaces. In the 1980s, you had to be slightly mad to settle in this old colonial town. Roy has founded a family here. He's become a Brazilian citizen, and he's committed to the protection of this land that has gradually become his own.
This was a town that was very isolated. Well, this whole area here. They had very little experience with they had experience with foreigners 100 years ago during the Diamond Era. But after that, all they really knew about Americans or European, or especially Americans, were what they saw in the movies. This was in the 70s, just spy films and things like that. So they naturally assumed that all Americans were spies. And they couldn't imagine, they really couldn't imagine anyone living here because they just thought it was a nice place. They would say to me, literally, they would say, well, what do you want to live here for? We just want to get out. And I said, well, it's beautiful here. And they go, there's something else here, something else.
Day after day, Roy puts pen to paper. He's drawing up maps to keep the memory of this land alive.
The idea is to put this down on paper before it's lost, to get their history remembered and permanent, whereas now it's very It's very volatile. It's all in all their heads, and like I say, this is the last generation of the old-time miners. So we either get this information down now, or it's lost forever.
Roy is now 62, and he still tirelessly hikes through the hills of the region. Today, Anicio, the oldest of the diamond hunters, is out walking with him. This old friend of Roy's is a precious witness, the living memory of the region.
What's the name of this stream?
Labon.
Why?
It comes from Domingo Labon. He came here with capangas, hired guns, outlaws, to kill Joao Cavao. Not many people know about that.
These stories are in danger of disappearing.
My children don't know them. And my grandchildren don't want to know. They say it's ancient history, like me.
No, it's important.
I'm not washed up yet. I'm still lucid.
This is the last generation that lived in the mountains and really worked here and knew it intimately. So I'm just a scribe, but it's all depends on these guys. And the other half of my hobby is what I like to do is wander around the hills here and find all of the old ruins from the diamond mining. It's kind of like modern industrial archaeology.
I love my way of life. I love to strike out into the forest, sleep on the stone or in the branches, like the garamperos.
How old are you?
83.
83? How about that?
I'm not the man I used to be, but I can still get around. There's a chamber inside. You're sheltered in there. It's very big.
This is a toca, a cave. The diamond hunters used it as a makeshift shelter. They'd live here for weeks on end.
Wow, it's really neat. Oh, I need a light, though. Wow.
These galleries wear a man down. Prospecting for diamonds means working in the damp. When you get over 40, you're finished. The stones are cold, you know, and there are a lot of mosquitoes, so we always had to have a fire going. I think of all the others who used to live this life and who are now gone. I think about the past, the old-timers. Back then in the diamond sites, everyone would get together on Saturdays around a big pot of feijoada, and we'd all eat together. We were all friends.
I'm good at finding things, so I would have really loved to be a miner. When I first came here, that's all I ever did. Not mining, but I went out in the hills with the old miners and learned about the geology of the area, how they worked the mines, where they lived, how they lived. That's all I ever did here for years, was just walk around with the miners. It was kind of like watching the old black and white movies from my childhood in the far west with the miners and their lifestyle up in the hills. The sons of the miners, the sons of the hunters who lived exploiting directly to, hunting game and digging out diamonds and setting fire to everything. Now their sons are guides, and they're green, and they have taken on the banner of conservation and protection. So now their sons are putting out the fires and picking up the garbage and protecting nature. So in one generation, it turned 180 degrees from direct exploitation to indirect use and protection of the area.
Every morning, Roy hikes the national park to feel the history of the Chapada Diamantina beneath his feet. In a few years, the locals will remember this American who traveled from New York and happened onto this place. They'll probably say they'd see him head off into the mountains every day. The ones that knew him will be able to tell how the life of this quiet American was a story of love at first sight between a man and nature.
We could say the spirits of the hills welcome me, and I welcome them, and we have a good relationship. And it's just a really nice place to live, to be in harmony with, to help. I do what I can to protect the hills, and the hills do what they can to protect me. So it's a pretty good relationship, all right? And just a really nice place. And I hope I can keep doing this.
Somewhere on Earth is off to visit the faraway land of Patagonia, one of the most sparsely populated regions on Earth. Southern Chile is a vast territory where the clouds seem within arm's reach. At the extreme tip of South America, the only limits are the sky, the sea, and the still unexplored peaks of the Andes. Patagonia lifts the veil on its fragile beauty. Jorge Arratia knows all the secrets of the balseros, the raftsmen of Patagonia. In this remote valley, the lumberjacks harvest cypress wood and transport it down the Rio Baker to the sea. Philip Reuter's childhood dream was to explore the wildest places of our planet. This enthusiastic mountaineer is a certified alpine guide and lives at the foot of the Andes' immense glaciers. Carlos Barria is one of the southernmost men on Earth. He fishes the icy water of the Beagle Channel. Carlos is a seaman, but also a cattleman. His ranch is situated at the ends of the Earth, very close to the mythical Cape Horn.
Nature is part of my life. When I fish, I'm communing with nature. It's my livelihood. The sea and the land, I make my living from both. I live thanks to nature.
Here, at the ends of the Earth, live people who can resist anything. Isolation and the glacial winds have forged the character of the inhabitants of Patagonia, perhaps the only place left where legends are still being written. Carlos, a king crab fisherman and rancher, lives beyond the end of the Earth on the Beagle Channel. The mountains and the sea are a never-ending test of courage for him. Carlos possesses the integrity of seafarers and the force of landsmen.
This is a very dangerous place in bad weather. When the weather's like today, we don't go out fishing for centolla, the king crab. The sea's too rough for our boats. It gets very tricky. I know this region like the back of my hand. I've been working here for more than 30 years. On the Beagle Channel, and further south as well. We're just across from the Tierra del Fuego. That's Argentina on the other side. The canal's split in two. One half's Argentine, the other half's Chilean.
Sailing here, where two great oceans, the Atlantic and the Pacific, meet, means taking a trip back in time. The Beagle Channel, a passage gouged out of the cliff faces at the tail end of the Andes, is the last strait in southern Tierra del Fuego. The waterway, discovered in 1825, gets its name from the British brig, the Beagle. Its captain, Robert Fitzroy, had undertaken several expeditions to Patagonia. On one, he took aboard a young naturalist who would become one of the most famous scientists of his time, Charles Darwin. Ever since they were discovered by Magellan, the icy waters of Patagonia's channels have preserved traces of the great age of discovery. These shores are a huge maritime cemetery. This is both the beginning and end of the world, one of our planet's most inhospitable regions, this land of the high latitudes with its dreaded cape, the legendary Cape Horn, gateway to the vast South Pacific. At Puerto Williams on the island of Navarino, the fishermen are getting ready for the centolla, or king crab season, their main source of income. On board Carlos's boat, Rodrimar, things are going wrong.
The reversing gear is broken. The only way to get it fixed is to take out the engine and ship it to Punta Arenas, where they'll be able to replace the part. I've got to hurry and get this engine onto the ferry boat.
There aren't any mechanics here in Puerto Williams. The nearest one is in Punta Arenas, the main port of Patagonia, 2 days away by boat.
The crab season starts in a week, and I've got a motor that breaks down. This is really rotten luck.
What Carlos does not mention is that not only could he very well miss out on the crab season, but he could also lose his crew. Many men in Puerto Williams earn their living from crab fishing, and for them it's out of the question to lose work on account of a faulty engine. Carlos knows this. Not only is his fishing season imperiled, but he'll have to find a boat to take him to Douglas, where he has his ranch and a herd of cattle. Douglas is 7 hours away by boat. Life on the edge of the earth has its constraints. One needs to accept them.
I was 20 years old when I came here from Puerto Natales. So I've been living in Puerto Williams for more than 30 years. Life was hard back then. Things are a little better now. There was only the naval base and very little work. That's why I came here, to work. I like the spot for its peace and quiet. So I stayed in Puerto Williams. I founded a family. I became a fisherman. Here in the world's southernmost village, I fell in love with this spot, and that's why I stayed.
Puerto Williams, on the shores of the Beagle Channel, is Chile's southernmost community. The village, located across from Argentina's Tierra del Fuego, is a former naval base. Now, the town has a population of just over 2,000, half of which are military personnel. Once a week, the Yagan makes its regular run to Punta Arenas. Carlos may miss the beginning of the king crab season, but he's taken care of part of his worries. His mechanical problems will soon be solved, but he'll have to be patient. It will take a month to get the repaired motor back. The southern storms swirl around the Antarctic. Patagonia is the first land that the west winds and the Pacific depressions encounter. Sailors call this part of the globe the roaring 40s and the furious 50s. Sailing conditions are some of the most extreme that navigators could ever encounter. Carlos is heading for Douglas, where he has his ranch way off the beaten track. With his crab fishing boat out of order, he boarded the Orcawaya, a rapid boat that serves the isolated communities along the Beagle Channel.
We're coming into Douglas Bay. I'm worried because I haven't been to check on the fellow that's working there for more than 20 days. He's all alone, and I haven't had any news from him. I'm worried about his health. I have no idea if he needs anything. You never know.
Uno nunca sabe.
Douglas is an old Anglican mission that was abandoned in the early 20th century. Carlos took over these lands at the end of the earth about 20 years ago. He owns around 100 head of cattle. As soon as he sets foot on dry land, he gets to work with Jose, the silent caretaker of the campo. Jose has been totally cut off from the rest of the world for 4 months.
Un lazo.
You have to have someone who knows how to work, and even more important, who can stand the isolation. You have to like being alone because out here your only friends are the radio and the dogs. There's no other company. You have to get used to the solitude. It's hard for those who can't live alone. It's a real problem.
Súper complicado.
Here in the far south, Douglas is the only place between Williams and Cape Horn where you can buy meat. Most of the animals we slaughter, we sell to the fishermen. They come through here for the crab season, starting in February. The boats that sail down south all pass through here, and they buy their meat from me.
Carlos has created a refuge for himself in Douglas, a parcel of forgotten land that is an ideal spot to appreciate the full measure of the beauty of the world. Carlos has left his worries behind him for the moment. There will always be time to get back out to sea. Meanwhile, he can still do some fishing here without a motor.
Even though I had a problem with the motor and had to send it to Punta Arenas, I can still work and fish for crabs now that I'm here in Douglas.
Ya no estamos parados, pues igual podemos hacer algo. Está empezando la temporada, así que es bueno.
It's very early in the season. First, I just set 2 traps to see if there are any centolla. If there are, I'll set some more.
Y después vamos a tirar más material.
These are all males. We're not allowed to keep the females. If we catch any females, we have to throw them back. I'm lucky. I got all males, good-sized adults. They'll sell well.
I
really love this spot. I've always worked in fishing, but I wanted to have a place of my own where I could come and recharge my batteries and work a little as well. Live as I please. I'm a fisherman, but I love the land. I'm not a rancher, but I really like it. I'm still learning about ranch work, in fact. I'm still more of a fisherman than a cattleman. From here to the end of the land, there's nobody. Only people passing through, like fishermen. For the moment, it's completely uninhabited. This place means a lot to me. It has a very important place in my heart, right after my wife and children. I realize that on the island of Navarino here, I'm living in the southernmost spot on Earth. If I hadn't settled here, I would have found somewhere even further south.
Philippe, an alpine guide eager for adventure, has a keen instinct for the extreme.
This is really the kind of spot where there are no limits. No limits to the forces of nature. No limits to the adventures you can experience without seeing anyone else. No limits to the distances. They are vast. There are no limits to anything here. This is practically unexplored territory, with thousands of places where man has never set foot.
A vestige of long-gone ice ages, the valley of the Rio Leones is a gateway to the summits of Patagonia. For almost 20 years now, Philippe has been opening trails for the climbing expeditions that he organizes. The Rio Leones is one of his itineraries, not the easiest, but it leads to the glaciers without passing by the sea and the Pacific Ocean.
Now we have some work to do in the river. We're going to remove some stones that are a hazard when we go upstream by boat. There are two big stones that are a little tricky to get past when the river is low, so we're going to try to get them out. I hope the water won't be too high to work in today. You lost a cow? We didn't see it anywhere, but if we find it, we eat it.
Después te la entrego en bandejita. ¿Te vale o no? Nos vemos. Que estés bien. Chao. Oye, ese perrito no es una oveja. Te equivocaste. Oye, Pato.
Hey, Pato. Pretty good weather today, huh?
Espero que no esté tan alto, pero
We can see the stones sticking out of the river there.
aparece. Así que
We should be able to get the job done.
Every summer, Philippe has to negotiate with nature for a rite of passage on the Rio Leones. With puny means and the folly of those who dream of moving mountains, Philippe takes on this unusual job.
Ocho, ¿te me copias?
This is what I like about this work, creating, assembling, constructing. Today, I'm drudging this stone. I come so close to it every time I come by here. I think I'm going to wreck the boat and end up in the water. If we can get it out today, it'd be a great relief. One stone a day. We have to spend hours in the cold water, move tons and tons of stone by hand, but nature lends a hand. We take out the stone and she carries away the rest. That's how it goes.
At last, the way to the summit is clear. It's summer in Patagonia, the best season for the Andinist, the mountaineers of the Andes. After a lifetime of pushing his limits, Philippe came to live on the shores of Lake Carrera General, in the heart of Patagonia. Philippe was born at the foot of the French Alps into a family of avid mountaineers. Then he spent a large part of his childhood in Santiago. Ever since, he has been following his dreams of peaks and pinnacles. He decided to put down roots in the village of Puerto Guadal. A veteran of Everest and extreme challenges, he is one of Chile's best climbers.
I was raised in the great outdoors. My father was an alpine guide. I remember when I was 2.5, I walked on the summit of Parmelan in the French Alps. When I was 4, I climbed La Tournette. I was raised outdoors. All my professional activities were connected with the outdoors and nature. Photographer, ski instructor, then alpine guide. Like many things, you catch the nature bug when you're little. And that's what happened with me. When I'm out in the wild, I don't think about anything apart from the stone or the tree I have to move or the cabin I have to build. It's a way of doing yoga. It's my own brand of yoga. It's life reduced to its simplest expressions: eating, sleeping, walking. That's all there is to it. It really does me a world of good.
Philippe is taking a group of climbers to the foot of the Leones Glacier, the base camp for the expeditions up Monte San Valentin. Over 4,000 meters high, it's one of Patagonia's tallest peaks. There are 3 passes to cross. The climb will take 20 days. The success of an expedition always depends on the weather conditions, but perhaps even more so here with the cold and wind. The weather is extreme, identical to the nearby Antarctic. Only 10% of the climbers who tackle this mountain manage to reach the peak.
From here on, you'll be crossing glaciers, climbing rocks, clambering up a crest, and all your encampments will be on ice. The main problems are the distances and the climate. Know that you're in for a rough time. You're doomed to sleep in your tent during a storm that will last 1 or 2 days. So, if things go bad, you have to start rationing before it gets too late, so that the trip can leave your head full of breathtaking images. The rest is a human experience that you will live to the fullest.
Mission accomplished for Philippe. His alpine guides will take charge of the mission from here on. After the Arctic and the Antarctic, this is the largest frozen expanse on Earth. Patagonia is home to the world's third largest ice field. All along the Cordillera of the Andes, the ice sheets stretch north and south for close to 500 kilometers. This is the realm of the Willowa, the cold, violent, and unpredictable wind that barrels down the mountain slopes at speeds up to 300 kilometers an hour. As soon as the weather permits, Philippe makes for the Leones Glacier. It's a fascinating monument, an imposing mass, and a fragile testimony to the upheavals of our planet.
Well, it gives me a feeling of sadness. The chunk that dropped off today was very high. It gave the glacier its characteristic height. You can see another one that's falling. You can tell summer is here. It's really so typical. I know from experience, and the saddest part of this whole thing is that there's no going back. We'll never recover that. That's very old ice. There's not much precipitation in the region anymore. So the glacier really took a body blow today. And that's sad. I've been coming here for 17 years. Back then, the glacier touched the rocks on both sides. The face was much higher and covered the width of the lake. About 5 years ago, we started noticing a definite acceleration in the melting of the ice that we didn't have in earlier years. Scientists said the glacier would lose 6 centimeters a day in summer and 1 centimeter a day in winter. There's no way to get that back. I think that in 5 years, it won't even come down to the water's edge anymore. This is the pulse of the planet. A little finger on the planet's pulse. There are other spots where it beats stronger, but this is my own pulse.
The village of Tortel, ensconced in the Gulf of Penas, was for a long time isolated from the rest of the world. It was not until the early 2000s that the arrival of Route 7, La Carretera Austral, broke the isolation of the inhabitants. Jorge was 14 when he came to Tortel. Like everyone else here, he became a lumberjack.
Tortel saw the light of day thanks to cypress wood. The boardwalks are all made of wood, the local wood. Cypress wood has been Tortel's livelihood for years.
Tortel was founded in the 1950s by the balseros, the raftsmen. They assembled thousands of rafts in order to transport logs to the sea. Jorge knows all the secrets of the balseros, and he wants to transmit his knowledge to his sons. They're going to make a descent of one of Patagonia's major rivers, a voyage through the heart of dark forests in the wake of the old raftsmen, the memory of the Rio Baker. Thanks to the cypress trees, people have been able to settle in this valley. Now, Jorge is no longer allowed to log the greenwood, only the trunks burned in the tragic forest fires of the 1960s, which destroyed a part of Patagonia's virgin forest.
I communicate with the trees. They also have a life of their own. In a certain way, we depend on them. They're a source of work for us. The trees give us everything we need. Cypress wood is very resistant to rain and humidity. You don't need to treat it for it to age well. It has a natural property. It is rot resistant. Unlike the other trees here, that's its #1 quality. We're going to Luis Jimenez Gonzalez's place. He's a descendant of the early settlers in the region of Rio Baker and Tortel. They came here around 1945. His father was one of the very first settlers here. Getting to know these people has been the best thing that's ever happened to me. They were very special people and they made a lot of sacrifices. They were brave, bravos, as we say in Patagonia.
Hola. ¿Hay gente o no hay gente? Permiso, señor, venimos a visitarlo un rato, don Luis Jiménez. ¿Cómo está usted? Gusto saludarle.
Jorge and Luis Jimenez are going to spend the day in the forest. They have to gather the timber to complete the rafts before the bad weather sets in.
Yo creo que hoy y mañana vamos a tratar de hacer lo que tenemos que hacer para que quede más o menos hecha la pega.
We've made huge sacrifices to make this land our own. A lot of sacrifices. And despite the progress, it's still hard, even now. We woodsmen, who've made this place our land. You know, we don't get much help from the government.
Muy poca ayuda del Estado.
In the 1940s, a few pioneering families like Luis's settled in this valley here in southern Chile. It was a handful of men and women who decided to colonize this untouched land far off the beaten track. The early settlers had nothing but their courage and a healthy dose of hope. Now, some 60 years later, life hasn't changed much for the men and women of Patagonia here on the banks of the Rio Baker. In the forest, everyday life is still laced with adventure. Luis and Diego, Jorge's youngest sons, have long dreamed of the day they would finally raft down the Rio Baker. They grew up listening to tales of the balseros, those men of the forest who carved in wood the legendary history of this corner of the world. The valley, flanked by steep mountains, is difficult to access. There's no road, no machine can fray a path into this forest. Oxen are still the best way to haul the cypress wood. Time has stood still here in the Baker Valley. Today, 70 years after the arrival of the first pioneers, Jorge and Jimenez are carrying on the tradition of the balseros.
The saying goes, in Patagonia, he who hurries loses time. Everything is difficult here because of the great distances between one place and another, between one village and another. The job we're doing today is very tricky. They say, you must walk slowly over pebbles. That's another Patagonian saying. It's the school of life, the school of nature. Life teaches you so many things. It teaches you to improvise. Everything we learned here has been transmitted by the pioneers, the early settlers. We've learned it all from them. I certainly did.
They have left us the heritage of the balseros, the art of log rafting. It's very important for us and for future generations. It's a privilege to be able to do this and to maybe one day pass it on so that it doesn't die out. These people are like living treasures. I think it's the most valuable aspect of our culture.
Jimenez, Jorge, and his sons have finished constructing 5 rafts. Now they'll take them down to the Rio Baker one by one to assemble them all into one large timber raft.
It's very moving for me to see them working like this, because I've been doing this for years, more than 20 years. Back then, I would work with the old-timers. I didn't take things so much to heart. It was just my everyday life.
Now there are more than 400 cypress logs assembled into one huge timber raft.
It's a beautiful sight, but it's very dangerous. I've done this all my life, and I've never had a problem, thank God. It's not pleasant work, but it's God's will. This is how we make our living here.
There's a Patagonian saying, if you live in Patagonia, you're doubly Chilean. Not everyone can put up with the way of life here. It's too hard. People from Santiago or any other big city are used to an agreeable climate. They've acquired a taste for modern conveniences. But if they were to come here, they wouldn't be able to stand it. It's just too harsh.
This morning, the weather is perfect to tackle the descent of the Rio Baker and reach the northern region of Patagonia's channels. If El Señor Baker, as they call the river, is in a good mood, it will take them 2 days riding the current to reach Tortel. When the winter is harsh and the summer mild, the water level can rise quite suddenly. Upstream, the glacier melt and the tributaries carry tons of alluvium. Trees torn from the banks form dams that will suddenly give way in flood periods. The river dwellers know that these natural phenomena can submerge the valley in a few hours. All the balseros remember those who lost their lives on the Baker. The balseros are at the mercy of the river and its whirlpools.
The river has a very strong current. It sweeps you along and tosses you from side to side. It's really swift. If you're overconfident, nature will not give you any breaks. You have to respect her. And even so, always anticipate. Nature is good, but all the same, you should never forget that she is the one who's in charge. You have to navigate at her rhythm. The rapids are difficult. The river is very high, but we made good time. I'm speaking from experience. We have a lot of respect for El Señor Baker.
Jorge is quite proud of his sons, and they're not about to forget their first descent of the Baker.
Sharing a mate on the river, out in the wild. A lot of folks from the city, even if it is the most beautiful and posh city in the world, would envy this pleasure. Here, we're breathing good, pure air. We're together as a family. This is one of life's greatest riches.
Quisiera escuchar el rumor de las olas, volver a sentir las palabras blancas acariciando mi rostro. En el atardecer quisiera escuchar la última canción de los caracoles escondidos en las rocas, melodía nacarada. ¿Dónde está el rey del castillo de arena? Amor de mi vida, tengo la sangre fría.
The men and women of Patagonia possess a good number of qualities. They are able to overcome difficult situations, to live in isolated areas, wild, untamed regions where the smallest job requires a great effort. All that is a vast treasure.
Quisiera caminar contra el viento, pecho a pecho, y halagarme sobre sus labios y caer en su boca roja. En la luz matinal de sus ojos